Hari Om. In this video, we are going to discuss the pin configuration of 8259A. In our previous video, we have discussed the different functional blocks of 8259A. The different features of 8259A we have already discussed. Now in this video, we are going to discuss the pin diagram and the description of each and every pin. When we discuss the 8259A interrupt controller, we have seen the two types of packages that are used for the 8259A, a dual inline package and the plastic lead chip carrier packages. So these are the two kinds of packages available for 8259A. So this 8259A is having 28 pins. Let us see what these pins are used for. One is your power supply line, the VCC line, the power supply line, plus 5 volt supply is required for this VCC, and obviously when there is a power supply you need a ground also. A ground line is also there. Then we have chip select line. This is an active low line, and a low value on this pin will enable read and write communication between the CPU and the 8259A. The interrupt acknowledgement functions are independent of chip select line. So only if this line is enabled, the 8259A will be active for reading or writing any data between the CPU and 8259A. Then of course we have read and write pins. The write pin is if it is low value, and a low value on this pin when chip select line is low enables 8259A to accept command words from the CPU. So where do we write the command words? We have two registers, initialization command word register or operation command word register inside the read write control logic, right? So inside those registers, the write signal will be writing the command words from the CPU. In the same way, the read line, a low on this pin when chip select line is low, enables the 8259A to release the status information onto the data bus for the CPU. Then of course we have the 8-bit lines D0 to D7. It is a bidirectional data bus. The control, status and interrupt vector information will be transferred through this particular bus. So this acts as the interface between the system bus and the internal bus of 8259A. Then we have three cascade lines 0 to 2. The cascade lines form a private 8259A bus to control a multiple 8259A structure, because in the cascading more than one 8259A will be connected. So these lines will be acting as a control lines for multiple 8259A structure. And these pins are outputs for a master, and it is input for the slave, which we have already discussed in our functional block diagram. So the cascade lines, the three cascade lines are there. If it is a master controller, these lines will be acting as outputs. If it is a slave controller, these lines will be acting as inputs. Then we have into the cascade buffer, we have seen a pin called as slave program or enable buffer. Slave program or enable buffer. So this is actually a dual function pin. When in the buffered mode, it can be used as an output to control buffer transceivers. Transceivers is a transmitter as well as receiver combined together. When not in the buffered mode, it is used as an input to designate a master or slave. So what happens? This is a dual function pin. That means what? If it is acting as in the buffered mode, it is used as an output to control the buffer. How do you control the buffer? Using the buffer, you transfer the data, you transmit the data, or you receive the data, right? So in the buffered mode, it will be acting as, this pin will be used for transmitting the data or receiving the data. So that means if it is 1, it will be transmitting the data. If it is 0, it will be receiving the data. Whereas if it is not in the buffered mode, it will be used to designate whether it is a master controller or the slave controller. So if SP value is 1, then it is acting as a master controller. If it is 0, it acts as a slave controller. So that is why this pin is called as a dual pin. So this pin will be doing 2 functions in 2 different modes. If it is buffered mode, it will specify whether it is used for transmitting the data or receiving the data. Whereas in the non-buffered mode, it will specify whether the controller is a slave controller or a master controller. That is what you have to understand here. Then we have the interrupt line. Obviously, the interrupt line goes high whenever a valid interrupt request is asserted. It is used to interrupt the CPU, thus it is connected to the CPU's interrupt pin. Then we have the interrupt request lines 0 to 7. So all these interrupt requests are asynchronous inputs, right? You can receive the interrupt request at any time. It is an asynchronous input. And an interrupt request is executed by raising an interrupt request input and holding it high until it is acknowledged. So if it is going to be edge triggered mode, it goes from low value to high value until it is acknowledged. Or if it is in the level triggered mode, it will be just a high level on the interrupt request input line, right? We have already discussed what is the difference between level triggered mode and edge triggered mode in our previous video. Then we have another pin, interrupt acknowledgement. Obviously this pin is used to enable 8259A interrupt vector data onto the data bus by a sequence of interrupt acknowledgement pulses issued by the CPU. So for each interrupt acknowledge pulse, we have seen what will be the sequence of events happening in the interrupt operation. So for each pulse, it will be transferring the data, it will be placing the call instruction, it will be placing the low order byte, it will be placing the high order byte. So it's all being done by each interrupt acknowledgement pulse. Then finally we have the A0 address line. This acts in conjunction with the chip select, write and read pins. It is used by the 8259A to decipher various command words and the CPU writes and status the CPU wishes to read. It is typically connected to the CPU A0 address line and A1 for 8086 and 8088, right? So this is used along with the chip select and read write values. Okay, so these are the different pins we have in the 8259A. We have seen when the address line A0 is at logic 0, the controller will be selected to write a command or read a status, right? So that is what is said here. This pin will be acting with the chip select line. So only if the chip select line is enabled, the read operation or the write operation can be performed. Along with that, the A0 line should be 0, that is low. Then the CPU will be writing the command word or the CPU will be reading the status information using this A0 address line. So these are the different pin description available for 8259A. So all the 28 pins are used to interface with the processor. The processor can be the 80 family processor, and all the required lines are specified using these pins available in 8259A. So with that we are completing 8259A description. Thank you.